Hit that like button and subscribe, because if you think your job is tough, wait until you hear what medieval peasants had to endure. Ever heard of the ducking stool? Spoiler, it's not a fancy chair for sipping tea. Welcome to a world where punishment was a spectator sport and myths didn't just walk the streets, they had their own fan clubs. Do you want to hear about the bizarre punishments, grotesque practices, and, oh yes, the sexual curiosities of ancient times? Buckle up. Why did people once believe that bathing was a health hazard? Or that a guilty conscience could literally make you fall ill? Here's a quick list of ancient oddities to keep you on your toes. 1. The brazen bull, a torture device that doubled as a barbecue. 2. Jousting tournaments, where knights didn't just compete for honor, but sometimes for their very lives. 3. The dance of death, where folks literally waltzed with their demise. Talk about an uncomfortable dance partner. What's more shocking? The Great Fire of London in 1666, which didn't just torch buildings, it turned the city into a fiery hellscape. Or how about the ancient Romans, who thought it was perfectly normal to feast while watching gladiators battle to the death? Have you ever wondered what bizarre beliefs led people to think that drinking powdered mummy could cure anything from a headache to heartbreak? Stay tuned, because we're diving deep into the annals of history filled with jaw-dropping facts and specific dates, from the strange to the downright grotesque. And hey, don't forget to turn on loop so this episode plays on repeat until you finally drift off to sleep, if you can. Ready to get weird? Let's go. ### the lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. Ahoy, brave souls! Today, we embark on a thrilling journey through the murky waters of Viking boat or storage protocols. Yes, you heard that right, or storage. While most of history's glorious tales revolve around pillaging, plundering, and the occasional dragon slaying, or storage remains an unsung hero of maritime lore, and dare I say, a veritable treasure trove of tedium. Let us cast off the moorings of time and set sail to the earliest records of those longships that sliced through the frosty waves of the North Atlantic. The year was around 800 AD, and we find ourselves in Norway, where the first Viking ships were built. As you might imagine, these vessels were designed to navigate not just the open seas, but also rivers and shallow lakes. They were the Swiss Army knives of their time, if the Swiss Army was primarily composed of bearded marauders. Or design and initial storage conundrums, 800–1000 AD. In the early days, Viking oars were constructed from local timber, primarily oak, measuring an impressive 3 to 4 meters in length. Imagine hauling around giant sticks that were essentially the size of your average Viking, without the charm, of course. But what do you do with them when you're not paddling through uncharted waters? The answer, as you might guess, was far from elegant. Oars were typically propped against the side of the ship, or, in some cases, tossed haphazardly into the ship's hull like a pile of unwashed laundry. This begs the question, did they think their oars would magically find their own homes? Or perhaps they were just too busy raiding to bother with proper storage. Regardless, a notable Viking chieftain named Bjorn the Untidy Håkonsson, around 900 AD, became infamous for his lack of oar management. Legend has it that during one of his raids, en route to the British Isles, his crew spent a good hour arguing over which oar belonged to whom. By the time they settled the dispute, they were already surrounded by the English Navy, a classic case of too many cooks spoil the broth, only it was more like too many oars spoil the ambush. The evolution of oar storage techniques, 1000 to 1100 AD. Fast forward to the 11th century, where Viking shipbuilding had reached a level of sophistication that even the most ambitious IKEA designer would envy. By now, the infamous Drakkars had emerged, boasting sleek designs and the ability to carry more loot than ever before. Oar lengths varied, but most were around 2.5 to 3.5 meters, and still, the Viking community grappled with the pressing question, where do we put these things? The Viking sagas tell us that some ingenious souls began to create oar racks. Yes, you heard that right, racks. These were wooden frames ingeniously designed to keep oars in one place. However, in typical Viking fashion, these racks were often built with the same care and attention as a drunken shipwright's last masterpiece. Imagine this: you're a Viking, returning home after a hard day of pillaging. You're tired, perhaps a bit sloshed from the ale, and you stumble to your ship, only to find that the oars have become a tangled mess in the rack. This led to the infamous oar rack wars around 1050 AD, where clans would compete not only in battle but also in oar organization. The Great Oar Storage Debate, 1100 to 1200 AD. By the 12th century, the oar storage debate was in full swing. Some Vikings argued for vertical storage. After all, it was less likely that a vertical oar would become a weapon during an unexpected skirmish with a rival clan. Others claimed that horizontal storage allowed for better access and a more aesthetically pleasing ship. At a gathering known as the Great Thing of Oars, in 1150 AD, the two factions faced off in a heated debate. Arguments for vertical storage *. 1. Less risk of oar-related injuries. 2. Easier to spot if an oar was missing. Hey, where's my oar? Oh, there it is, standing upright like a proud warrior. 3. Provided a chance to showcase craftsmanship. Some Vikings even painted their oars with mythical creatures. Arguments for horizontal storage *. 1. Easier to grab during sudden attacks. Quick. Grab an oar and row like you've just seen a ghost. 2. Allowed for more oars to fit into a single space, maximizing storage. 3. Provided a great place to sit and contemplate life as a Viking, pondering deep questions like, why don't we ever raid on Mondays? In the end, the debate was settled by a rather unfortunate incident involving a drunken Viking attempting to demonstrate vertical storage by standing on an oar rack. The resulting chaos led to a unanimous vote for horizontal storage, if only to prevent further injuries. The oar storage renaissance, 1200 to 1300 AD. As we navigate through the 13th century, Viking society began to embrace more structured approaches to oar storage. The introduction of oar locks, a revolutionary concept, meant that oars could now be secured in place while not in use. This was a game changer, akin to the invention of the wheel, or more accurately, the invention of the wheel that actually stayed on the cart. Yet, with innovation came absurdity. Enter Odd, the organized Thorbjornsson, who in 1275 AD made a name for himself by developing a color-coded or storage system on his longship, the Skjoldr. Each oar was painted a different color based on the owner's mood and personality. Red for the fiery temperament. Blue for the calm and collected. Green for the, I just want to go home, type. This system, while amusing, led to a series of unfortunate events when an enemy ship attacked, and every Viking was frantically trying to remember which color denoted, grab your weapon, versus, grab the ale. The decline of or storage protocols, 1400 to 1500 AD. As the Viking Age came to a close, so too did the meticulous nature of ore storage. By the late 15th century, with the rise of exploration and trade, the focus shifted from raiding to commerce. Ore storage protocols began to fall into disarray as the once mighty Vikings turned their attention to creating the world's first IKEA catalogs, because let's face it, who has time for neatly organized ores when there are flat-pack furniture solutions to explore? In the year 1475, a shipwright named Rolf, the Forgetful, Bjornsson famously declared, "Why bother with oars? Let's just use sails." With this unprecedented statement, he single-handedly set the stage for the decline of the oar in Viking society. The last known ore storage system was discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Norway, where oars were found haphazardly tossed aside, much like the remnants of a long-forgotten party. Conclusion: a legacy of mediocrity. And so we find ourselves at the end of our voyage through the lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. What have we learned? That even the most fearsome warriors struggled with the mundane aspects of life. Whether it was propping oars against the ship's hull or engaging in debates that would make modern-day political discussions seem riveting, the Vikings were just like us, prone to the chaos of organization. As we look back at this historical saga, let us raise a tankard of mead to the unsung heroes of ore storage, those warriors who valiantly fought against the chaos of life on the sea, one mismanaged oar at a time. And remember, the next time you find yourself battling the clutter of life, think of Bjorn, the untidy, and his crew, who managed to turn an ore storage disaster into a legendary raid. Now, if you'll excuse me, I believe I have a few oars of my own to organize. ### the lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. The Viking Age, spanning from approximately 793 to 1066 AD, is often romanticized as a period of daring raids and seafaring conquests. However, lost amidst the tales of pillaging and exploration is a rather mundane but crucial aspect of Viking maritime culture, the art of ore storage. Yes, those wooden extensions of Viking ambition had their own set of protocols that could only be described as lackluster, at best. Let's dive into the depths of this underwhelming topic and explore the details. ### Construction methods and materials. Viking longships were marvels of engineering, built for speed and agility. Their oars, however, were often constructed from simpler materials. Most oars were made from sturdy oak, chosen for its durability and availability in the Nordic regions. The average size of an oar ranged from 12 to 16 feet in length, depending on the size of the vessel and the strength of the crew. 1. Materials. Wood. Oak was the primary choice, with birch occasionally used for lighter oars. Adhesives. Natural resins and animal glues were used to bind oar blades and handles. Metal. Some oars featured iron tips, but these were rare due to cost. 2. Construction techniques. Hand carving. Oars were often hand carved, making each unique in weight and balance. Steam bending. This technique was used to create a slight curve in the oar for improved hydrodynamics. 3. Cost. The production of a single oar could set a Viking back about 3 silver coins, a hefty sum considering a cow could be purchased for around 10 coins. Thus, oar storage became a matter of great economic importance. After all, no one wants to lose a small fortune to the waves. ######bureaucratic rules and punishments. While Viking society is often depicted as a loose collection of raiders, they had their own bureaucratic systems, including oar storage. Viking chieftains and their councils established specific protocols for maintaining order in oar storage, an endeavor vital for the efficiency of naval expeditions. 1. Storage locations. Oars were typically stored on the ship itself or in designated areas at the dock. If not stored properly, oars could warp, making them useless during crucial raids. 2. Regulations. Every ship had to maintain an inventory of oars, which was checked regularly. Oar racks were required to be constructed of sturdy timber to prevent sagging. 3. Punishments. A captain found neglecting oar storage could be fined 5 silver coins, effectively ensuring that oars were treated with the respect they deserved. For repeated offenses, the captain could face a loss of rank or even banishment from future raids. Nothing says motivation like the threat of being left behind while your crew sets sail for glory. ####### roles and job descriptions. Oar management was no small task, and several roles within the Viking ship's crew were dedicated to ensuring the proper storage and maintenance of oars. 1. Oar keeper. Duties: responsible for the oar inventory, ensuring all oars were accounted for and in good condition. This role required keen attention to detail and a knack for woodworking. Qualifications: must have a basic understanding of shipbuilding and maintenance. 2. Shipmaster. Duties: oversaw all aspects of the ship, including oar storage. The shipmaster had the final say on oar-related decisions, sometimes leading to heated debates over whether to store oars horizontally or vertically. Qualifications: a seasoned sailor with experience in both navigation and oar-related bureaucratic regulations. 3. Crew members. Duties: all crew members were expected to contribute to the maintenance of oars, especially before and after voyages. This involved cleaning and checking for damage. Qualifications: basic rowing skills and a willingness to follow orders, particularly when the shipmaster was in a bad mood. In a society where glory was earned on the battlefield, one might think the oar keepers were the unsung heroes of the Viking Age. Alas, they likely faced more ridicule than respect, as their meticulous protocols often went unnoticed until an oar was needed in a pinch, at which point, the oar keeper would suddenly become everyone's favorite person. ###### Technical specs and inventories. To understand the oar storage protocols fully, one must delve into the technical specifications and inventories that govern their existence. 1. Oar specifications. Length, typically 12 to 16 feet, tailored to the size of the ship. Blade width, generally about 6 to 8 inches, allowing for optimal propulsion without excessive drag. Weight, an average oar weighed about 10 to 15 pounds, manageable for a crew member to handle. 2. Inventory management. Each ship was required to keep an inventory of oars, which included the type of wood used, length and width measurements, condition notes, e.g., slightly warped, needs patching, ready for battle. Inventories were updated before and after each voyage, a task that took a dedicated crew member a full day of labor, leading to more than a few complaints about too much oar-related paperwork. 3. Storage protocols. Oars were to be stored in designated racks, spaced properly to avoid warping. A minimum of 2 crew members were required to lift oars into storage to avoid accidents, because nothing screams Viking like a back injury from a poorly executed oar lift. ##### Witty asides. It's amusing to think that while Vikings were out conquering lands and establishing trade routes, they were also engaged in a battle of their own, the struggle against the elements threatening their precious oars. After all, nothing ruins a raid quite like a paddle that's lost its edge, much like a Viking without a good horned helmet. And let's not forget the irony. While Vikings were renowned for their ferocity, they dedicated significant resources to ensuring their oars were stored properly. Perhaps they understood that it's hard to strike fear into the hearts of your enemies when your rowboat looks like it's been through a lumberjack convention gone wrong. ##### Conclusion. The Viking boat or storage protocols may not be the stuff of legends, but they are a testament to the intricate balance of order and chaos in Viking society. From construction methods to bureaucratic regulations, roles within the crew, and meticulous inventories, the humble oar was treated with respect that belied its mundane nature. While the oar keepers may not have sung songs of valor or wielded swords on the battlefield, their contributions to Viking naval efficiency cannot be overlooked. After all, behind every great raid is a well-organized oar storage system, proving once and for all that even in the world of seafaring warriors, the devil is in the details. So the next time you think of Vikings, remember, they didn't just sail the seas, they also kept their oars in order, one protocol at a time. ### The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. While we often romanticize the daring exploits of Viking raiders, traders, and explorers, there lies an overlooked aspect of their maritime culture, the utterly mundane but surprisingly intricate protocols surrounding the storage of boat oars. Yes, oars, the unsung heroes of Viking seafaring, deserve their moment in the spotlight. This exploration will delve into the construction methods, the bureaucratic red tape, job roles, technical specifications, and inventories that define the Viking approach to oar storage. Spoiler alert, it's not all about plundering and pillaging. Hashtag construction methods and materials. The Viking Age, circa 793 to 1066 AD, was a time of impressive craftsmanship, particularly in shipbuilding. Oars were typically made from sturdy hardwoods such as oak, ash, or elm. The choice of wood was crucial, given the harsh maritime conditions faced by these seafarers. Oak was favored for its strength, while ash was preferred for its flexibility and lightness. 1. Wood selection. Oak, heavy and durable, ideal for longer voyages. Ash, lighter and more flexible, used for speed. Elm, water-resistant and used in coastal regions. 2. Construction techniques. Laminating. Vikings often used a technique of laminating multiple strips of wood together to increase strength. Carving. Oars were hand-carved, featuring a tapered blade for easier movement through water. Finishing. The oars were often coated with a mixture of fish oil and resin to protect against rot. Who knew fish oil could be a sailor's best friend? Hashtag costs. The cost of producing an oar was not insignificant for a Viking community, particularly in terms of time and labor. While exact figures are lost to history, we can infer some costs based on available resources and labor requirements. Raw materials. Oak, approximately 5 to 10 silver coins per oar, depending on region and availability. Ash, slightly cheaper, around 3 to 7 silver coins. Labor. A skilled shipwright could take up to a week to craft a single oar. Given the average labor cost of a skilled tradesman at around 2 silver coins a day, the total cost of labor alone could amount to 14 silver coins or more, an investment not to be taken lightly. In a society where resources were tightly controlled, the cost of oars dictated not only how many ships could be built but also how many raids could be launched. Hashtag bureaucratic rules and punishments. Believe it or not, Viking society had its share of red tape, particularly regarding the storage and maintenance of oars. The laws governing naval affairs were often codified in local chieftain decrees and varied between regions. Here are some examples of the bureaucratic hurdles faced by Viking ship crews. 1. Storage regulations. Oars were to be stored in a designated area of the ship, preferably secured with iron clamps to prevent loss during rough seas. Any crew found to have improperly stored oars faced fines of up to 5 silver coins, a hefty sum for a working sailor. 2. Maintenance protocols. Oars were to be inspected at least once a fortnight. Failure to comply could result in a public shaming ritual, where the offender had to wear a "bad sailor" badge made of seaweed. 3. Punishments for negligence. If a crew member was found with a damaged oar, they could be assigned the laborious task of handcrafting a replacement, along with an additional punishment of swabbing the deck for a fortnight. While these rules may seem trivial today, they were critical for maintaining the operational efficiency of Viking fleets. After all, who wants to find themselves in the middle of a raid with a broken oar? Imagine the embarrassment. Hashtag roles and job descriptions. The ore storage protocol was not just a solitary affair, it involved a team of dedicated individuals, each with specific roles and responsibilities. Here's a brief look at who was involved. 1. Shipwright. Responsibilities: design and construct oars, oversee maintenance. Skills required: woodworking, knowledge of maritime needs, and a knack for problem solving, like how to explain why there's one oar missing. 2. Oarsman. Responsibilities: row the ship, maintain oars, report damage. Skills required: physical strength, rowing techniques, and the ability to multitask while dodging sea spray. 3. Quartermaster. Responsibilities: inventory management of supplies, including oars, ensuring proper storage protocols are followed. Skills required: organizational skills, negotiation, especially for trading spare oars, and a firm grasp of mathematics, not a bad skill set for a pirate. 4. Chief of Storage. Responsibilities: implementation of the oar storage protocols and ensuring adherence to bureaucratic rules. Skills required: strong leadership, patience, and the ability to deal with disgruntled oarsmen who just want to row. Hashtag technical specs and inventories. The technical specifications of Viking oars were remarkably standardized, which helped streamline production and storage. Here are some key specs. 1. Length. Oars typically ranged from 12 to 16 feet in length, depending on the size of the ship. Longships required longer oars for better leverage. 2. Width. The blades were generally 8 to 12 inches wide, optimized for both power and speed. 3. Weight. A fully constructed oar weighed around 10 to 15 pounds, depending on the material and design. As for inventories, a Viking longship could carry anywhere from 20 to 30 oars, depending on its size. Maintaining an accurate inventory was crucial. After all, you wouldn't want to find yourself short on oars during a high-stakes raid. Hashtag sample inventory list for a typical longship. 1. Total oars, 25. Oak oars, 15, for speed and durability. Ash oars, 10, for lighter use in coastal waters. 2. Condition. Serviceable, 20. Damaged, 5, pending repairs. 3. Storage location, midship, secured with iron clamps. Hashtag conclusion. The history of Viking boat or storage protocols may not have the swashbuckling excitement of raids or the allure of treasure, but it highlights a fascinating aspect of Viking culture: their commitment to organization, craftsmanship, and the importance of teamwork in their maritime endeavors. The oars, often overlooked, were not just tools, they were integral to the Viking way of life. So, next time you think of the Vikings, remember the unsung oarsmen, the diligent artisans, the meticulous quartermasters, and the bureaucratic enforcers who ensured that every oar was ready for battle. After all, without proper oar storage protocols, history might have looked vastly different. Who knows? Maybe we would have known them as the Viking boatless wonders, instead. Hashtag the lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. The Viking Age, which spanned from approximately 793 to 1066 AD, is often romanticized for its fierce warriors, daring explorations, and impressive longships. However, lurking in the shadows of this epic saga lies a rather mundane, yet surprisingly intricate aspect of Viking maritime culture: the protocols surrounding oar storage. While sagas sing of raids and conquests, one might wonder what happens to those trusty oars when they aren't cleaving through the frothy seas. The answer is a mix of construction methods, bureaucratic rules, and technical specifications that could make even the most ardent history buff yawn. ####construction methods and materials. Oars, essential for navigating the tumultuous waters of Scandinavia, were typically constructed from locally sourced timber. The predominant wood used was oak due to its strength and availability. The Vikings had a knack for woodworking, and oars were meticulously crafted to withstand the rigors of sea travel. Wood types: oak, primary; ash, secondary, for lighter oars; pine, used for less critical vessels. Construction techniques: carving. Each oar was hand-carved, with particular attention given to the blade for optimal propulsion. Lashing. Many oars featured lashing techniques to secure the blade to the shaft, a method that allowed for easier repairs in the field. Despite the craftsmanship, oar construction was not without its costs. A single quality oak oar could run up to 2 silver coins, a significant investment for a Viking household. When one considers that a longship could accommodate over 20 oars, the expense quickly escalated. In a society where resources were often scarce, this represented a substantial financial commitment. ####bureaucratic rules and punishments. While the Viking Age is often seen as a time of lawlessness, there were indeed rules governing oar storage that often rivaled the complexity of those found in modern bureaucracies. Towns and settlements would establish protocols to ensure that oars were stored properly, primarily to prevent theft and damage. Rules: oars must be stored in designated oar houses, known as oarhus. Each family's oars had to be marked with a unique symbol, often a rune or a personal insignia. Failure to comply with storage protocols could result in penalties, such as community service or, in extreme cases, a fine of up to 5 silver coins. Punishments: minor infractions might lead to a reprimand from the local thing, a legislative assembly. Repeat offenders could be subjected to a public shaming ritual, where they would have to wear a dunce cap emblazoned with a poorly painted oar. One can only imagine the embarrassment of a Viking having to walk around with a giant oar above their head, a true testament to the lengths they would go to uphold community standards. ###roles and job descriptions. The management of oar storage was not a task assigned to just anyone, it required a specific set of roles within the Viking community. 1. Oar master, oarhovding. Responsibilities: oversaw the entire oar storage operation, ensured compliance with regulations, and managed inventory. Qualifications: must have at least 5 years of experience in maritime operations and a thorough understanding of woodcraft. 2. Storage keeper, Lagreve. Responsibilities: maintained the cleanliness and organization of the ore hus, kept records of ore ownership, and conducted regular inspections. Qualifications: should be adept at counting and organizing, ideally with a background in accounting, the Viking equivalent. 3. Repair specialist, lagnet. Responsibilities: handled the maintenance and repair of ores, ensuring all blades were sharp and handles were securely lashed. Qualifications: must possess advanced woodworking skills and a keen eye for detail. 4. Inventory clerk, or inventor. Responsibilities: created and updated lists of stored ores, tracking any changes in ownership or condition. Qualifications: a basic understanding of runes and the ability to tally numbers quickly. These roles, while perhaps not the most glamorous in the Viking hierarchy, were vital for maintaining the community's naval prowess. After all, a ship without oars is just a fancy floating log. ###### Technical specs and inventories. The technical specifications of Viking ores varied based on their intended use, but a typical longship ore had the following dimensions. Length: approximately 12 to 16 feet, 3.6 to 4.8 meters, depending on the size of the vessel. Blade width: generally 6 to 8 inches, 15 to 20 centimeters, at the thickest point, designed for optimal thrust. Weight: a single ore typically weighed between 10 to 15 pounds, 4.5 to 6.8 kilograms. ##### Inventory management. The Vikings took inventory management seriously, despite their reputation for spontaneity. Ore inventories were meticulously maintained, often recorded on parchment or carved into wood tablets. Sample ore inventory: 10 oak ores, marked with the rune K. 5 ash ores, marked with the rune B. 2 replacement blades, stored in the emergency kit. 3 lashing kits, for repairs at sea. Regular audits were conducted to ensure that the ore hus was not only compliant with community regulations but also stocked with the necessary tools for maintenance. If any discrepancies were found, the ore master would summon the storage keeper for an impromptu investigation, often leading to a game of "Where did that ore go?" that could rival any detective drama. #######. The decline of ore storage protocols. As Viking society transitioned from a raiding culture to one more focused on trade and settlement, the rigid protocols surrounding ore storage began to wane. By the late 10th century, many communities adopted a more laissez-faire attitude towards ore management. The invention of new technologies, such as sails, reduced the reliance on oars altogether, leading to the gradual obsolescence of these protocols. Key changes. Introduction of sails reduced the number of oars required for long-distance travel. As settlements became more urbanized, communal or storage facilities were replaced by personal storage solutions. The rise of fishing and trade vessels favored smaller crews, further diminishing the need for complex or storage systems. Conclusion. While the world of Viking ore storage may not capture the imagination like tales of heroism and conquest, it is a fascinating glimpse into the everyday lives of these seafaring people. The construction methods, bureaucratic rules, roles and job descriptions, and technical specifications reveal a society that was, at its core, both practical and community-oriented. In a world where every ship and oar played a crucial role in the survival of the Viking way of life, one can appreciate the importance of those seemingly tedious storage protocols. So, the next time you find yourself at a lakeside picnic, spare a thought for the oar masters of yore, who ensured that the Viking age glided smoothly across the waters, one meticulously stored oar at a time. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. Ah, the Vikings! Renowned for their fearless raids, striking longships, and, as we are about to explore, a complete lack of enthusiasm when it came to the protocols surrounding oar storage. While we celebrate their maritime exploits, the mundane details of oar storage might be the most overlooked aspect of their seafaring legacy. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride through the waves of bureaucracy and lackluster logistics. #### construction methods, materials, and costs, c. 800 to 1000 AD. The Viking longship, a marvel of naval engineering, was constructed using clinker-built methods, which involved overlapping planks of oak that were fastened with iron rivets. But what about the oars? These were typically made from robust timber, primarily ash or oak, chosen for their strength and flexibility. 1. Materials. Ash, lightweight and strong, providing excellent leverage. Oak, durable and heavy, suitable for larger vessels. Pine, occasionally used for less critical oars due to availability. 2. Construction costs. A single oar could cost between 2 to 3 silver coins. Value fluctuated based on the Viking Age's many trade routes. The longship itself could range from 100 to 200 silver coins, depending on size and craftsmanship. While the cost of oar construction might seem paltry compared to the expense of the ship itself, one could certainly argue that without proper oar storage, all that investment could go overboard, literally. #### bureaucratic rules and punishments, c. 900 AD. As any good bureaucratic system would have it, the Vikings had established a series of rules regarding oar storage, often inscribed on stone tablets or, more commonly, passed down orally. These rules were as dry as the oars left out in the rain. The following are a few of the documented protocols. 1. Storage locations. Oars must be stored in the designated, or barns, which were often located near shipyards. Oars not housed in these sanctuaries faced the wrath of the local chieftain. 2. Punishments for non-compliance. A fine of 5 silver coins for improper storage. A public shaming, often accompanied by a bard's rendition of one's incompetence, a fate worse than mere financial penalties. 3. Record keeping. Each village maintained a oar ledger to track the condition and location of their oars. This ledger was as important as the ship's log, though far less likely to be discussed over mead. After all, who wouldn't want to be remembered as the Viking who lost all their oars to the sea because they left them unguarded? #### roles and job descriptions, c. 950 AD. In the Viking world, Every role was pivotal to the community's success, except, of course, the role that pertained to ore storage. Still, here are some of the key figures involved. 1. Ore warden. Responsible for overseeing ore storage and ensuring compliance with all protocols. Duties included conducting weekly inspections and managing the ore ledger. Reported directly to the local chieftain. Talk about a high-stakes job. 2. Shipwright. While primarily focused on ship construction, these artisans had a hand in crafting ores and deciding their storage. Their expertise ensured that ores were made to last, but they rarely got involved in the bureaucratic nightmares surrounding storage. 3. Ore fetcher. A junior position, often filled by the sons of warriors or the most unfortunate of the village. Tasked with retrieving ores for voyages, often at risk of being late and thus incurring the wrath of the ore warden. 4. Bard. While not directly involved in ore management, bards had the power to immortalize, or ruin, one's reputation based on ore mismanagement. Just imagine, "I'm sorry, my lord, I lost the ores." Cue the bard. These roles highlight a commitment to ore storage that was as serious as it was humorously absurd. Who would have thought that the fate of a crew could hinge on the diligence of the ore warden? Hashtag technical specs and inventories, circa 1000 AD. Viking ores were not just sticks you grabbed and threw in the water, they were meticulously crafted tools designed for efficiency. Understanding their specifications gives us a clearer picture of not just the ores but the entire Viking maritime culture. 1. Specifications. Length, ranged from 12 to 16 feet depending on the size of the vessel. Width, approximately 5 to 8 inches at the handle, tapering to 2 inches at the blade. Weight, each ore weighed around 10 to 15 pounds, which meant that a full complement of oars could add significant weight to the ship. 2. Inventory practices. Each longship required a specific number of oars, typically 20 to 30, depending on its size and purpose. A ship's inventory list often included number of oars in good condition, oars needing repairs, oars that, for some inexplicable reason, had mysteriously vanished, usually blamed on the sea, classic. 3. Ore maintenance. Oars were regularly inspected for splintering or warping, with a dedicated team of ore maintainers, though it was often a one-person job as no one wanted to take on the responsibility of ore maintenance. This technical aspect of oars reveals the Vikings' attention to detail and engineering prowess, even if their organizational skills left much to be desired. Hashtag the lasting impact of ore storage protocols, circa 1100 AD. Fast forward to the decline of the Viking Age, and we find that while their naval prowess waned, the bureaucratic absurdities of ore storage remained. The rules and regulations evolved but retained their dry humor, often becoming the subject of Viking jokes. 1. Cultural legacy. Ore storage practices became a point of pride and were often highlighted in local sagas. Did you hear about Bjorn? He lost all his oars during a storm, became a cautionary tale for generations. The importance of ore storage found its way into Viking education, with young warriors being taught the grave consequences of neglecting or organization. 2. Modern-day comparisons. The protocols established by the Vikings can be humorously compared to modern boating regulations. Just imagine a Viking or warden at the helm of a modern marina, shaking his head at the sight of floating kayaks without proper storage protocols. Back in my day, he would say, we had rules. Conclusion. In summary, while Viking raids and conquests capture the imagination, the history of their storage protocols reveals a culture rich in both absurdity and practicality. From construction methods to bureaucratic rules, the lackluster history of storage provides a unique lens through which to view Viking society. So the next time you admire a Viking longship or hear tales of daring sea voyages, spare a thought for the oars, those unsung heroes whose fates were tied not just to the seas but to the equally tumultuous waters of Viking bureaucracy. After all, one could argue that without the proper storage of oars, the Vikings might have been just another group of folks with a penchant for bad weather and even worse organization. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols, a droll dive into maritime mediocrity. Ah, the Vikings! Those seafaring Norsemen who, with their horned helmets, which, let's be honest, they probably never wore, raided, pillaged, and gallivanted across Europe in a haze of glory and mead. But what's often overlooked in this raucous narrative is the unsung hero of the Viking fleet, the humble oar. Yes, while history books are busy fawning over dragon-headed longships and epic battles, the story of how these Orcish adventurers stored their oars is one of sheer banality, a tale as thrilling as watching paint dry on a particularly dreary winter's day in Norway. Regional variations over time, the oar that never was. Let's start with the various regional adaptations of oar storage, which, believe it or not, had its own nuances. In the fjords of Norway, oar storage was as haphazard as a tavern brawl. Oars were often tossed into the hull willy-nilly, creating a chaotic environment that would have made any modern-day organization expert weep. This lack of system left the crew scrambling like chickens in a coop whenever they needed to grab an oar before ramming into a particularly obstinate rock. Meanwhile, in Denmark, the Viking approach to oar storage was slightly more refined. Here, they employed a primitive yet effective method of hanging oars along the ship's sides, like a particularly nautical art installation that could only be appreciated by fellow seafaring folk. It was said that this arrangement allowed for a swift grab-and-go situation, but let's be honest, with all the marauding and looting involved, how often were these oars actually used for practical purposes? Fast forward to the 11th century, and we see the Swedes jumping on the oar storage bandwagon with a flair for the dramatic. They crafted elaborate oar racks that were painted with intricate runes and symbols, perhaps in an attempt to turn the mundane into the mystical. Imagine the surprise of a Viking warrior returning from a fruitful raid only to find his oars adorned with swirling designs that would make even the most pretentious art critic swoon. Ah, yes, these oars tell a story of valor, he might say, while secretly wondering if they were still seaworthy. Laws, edicts, and taxes, the oar's legal quagmire. Now, no tale of Viking oar storage would be complete without a foray into the world of laws and regulations. Yes, even the Vikings had a penchant for bureaucracy when it came to their maritime endeavors. In the 10th century, King Harold Bluetooth, yes, that Bluetooth, issued an edict concerning the storage of oars, primarily to prevent theft. The law dictated that all oars must be marked with the owner's sigil, a sort of Viking version of an ownership tag. So, if you happened upon a particularly fetching oar, you could be sure it belonged to Bjorn the Bold, or, in a more humorous twist, Olaf the Obnoxious. Taxes were levied on oars too. That's right, the Viking Age wasn't all horned helmets and pillaging, it was also about keeping the coffers filled. Local chieftains imposed taxes on oars based on their length and craftsmanship. The longer the oar, the heftier the tax. Imagine the poor Viking who had to justify his extravagant 12-foot oar as a tool for navigating treacherous waters, while secretly wishing to use it for more nefarious purposes, such as a makeshift javelin in the next raid. As for record-keeping, the Vikings had ledgers that would make any accountant swoon, if accountants were into Norse mythology, that is. They meticulously recorded or inventory, usage, and even the occasional breakage. Today, we lost 2 oars due to a rogue wave, might read a ledger entry, followed by a detailed account of who was responsible. Spoiler alert, it was always the guy who had won too many flagons of mead the night before. Logistics and supply chains, the order of the day. When it comes to logistics, the Viking approach to oar storage was, shall we say, not exactly cutting edge. Oar supply chains were as convoluted as a labyrinthine fjord. Oars were crafted from local wood, typically ash or oak, because who doesn't love a good hardwood, and were often stored in communal shipyards. This led to a veritable free-for-all whenever a ship was being readied for a voyage, with oars being snatched up as if they were the last loaf of bread in a post-apocalyptic supermarket. Transportation of oars was another story. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of Amazon Prime, so oars were often transported via longships, which were themselves laden with loot, livestock, and a few overly ambitious warriors who believed they could row their way to Valhalla. Picture this, a longship filled with half a dozen oars stacked precariously, with crew members arguing over who had the better technique for maneuvering them. It's a wonder they ever made it back to shore in one piece. Record keeping, the chronicles of oar storage. As for record keeping, we must tip our hats to the Vikings for their surprisingly meticulous documentation of their oar-related activities. Viking sagas might be filled with tales of heroism and conquest, but buried within those epic tales are hints at the mundane. Oars were often catalogued in ship logs, with entries detailing their length, material, and even the number of times they had been used during raids. On this day, we set sail with 5 oars, 3 of which were previously used to row away from a particularly angry group of villagers, one might read. These records were kept on animal skins, which were more durable than one might expect, especially when you consider the Viking penchant for rough seas. Yet these records were not without their hiccups. In one particularly charming incident, a scribe accidentally recorded an oar as being blessed by the gods, rather than broken by a rogue wave. The ensuing confusion led to a hasty reparative journey back to the shipyard, where the oar was ceremoniously returned to its rightful, broken, place, much to the chagrin of the crew who had already planned a celebratory feast. A surprising anecdote, the oar that ate a man. Now, dear reader, allow me to regale you with an anecdote that will surely cement the notion that Viking life, while romanticized, was riddled with its own grotesque ironies. In the year 1050, during a particularly raucous raid on the shores of England, a Viking named Ragnar the Reckless had a rather unfortunate encounter with an oar, more specifically, with a particularly long and unwieldy one. As the crew prepared to make a hasty retreat, Ragnar, in all his brashness, decided to show off his strength by lifting the oar overhead and proclaiming his superiority to the crew. Alas, in a twist of fate befitting a Shakespearean tragedy, he lost his balance and the oar came crashing down. It did not merely smack him on the head, but rather, it catapulted him off the ship and into the sea like a Viking cannonball. As Ragnar flailed in the water, his fellow crew members, in between fits of laughter and a few gasps of horror, realized that their oars were, in fact, not meant for such antics. The oar, now nicknamed Ragnar's Revenge, became something of a legend among the crew, a reminder that even the mightiest of warriors could succumb to the perils of poor oar management. In the aftermath, the crew made a pact: they would never again let Ragnar handle the oars without supervision, and they would ensure that all oars were stored in a manner that didn't resemble a chaotic episode of a maritime circus. The tale of Ragnar and his ill-fated oar became a cautionary story passed down through generations, a grotesque yet humorous reminder of the importance of proper oar storage protocols, or lack thereof. Conclusion: the oars that time forgot. So there you have it, a deep dive into the lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. While the world may remember them for their epic voyages and relentless conquests, it is the unsung story of oars, their storage, their logistics, and their occasional role in comedy, that truly encapsulates the Viking spirit. Perhaps next time you find yourself in a conversation about Viking glory, you might consider steering it toward the enigmatic, often absurd world of oar storage. After all, if there's one thing history teaches us, it's that even the most fearsome warriors have had their moments of utter ridiculousness. And if that doesn't bring a smile to your face, well, you might just need to reevaluate your sense of humor. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. Ahoy, fellow history buffs and accidental time travelers. Today, we embark on a journey through the murky waters of Viking boat or storage protocols, a subject so riveting it could make a herring yawn. But fear not. We shall navigate through regional variations, laws, logistics, and perhaps even a grotesque anecdote or two. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride through the annals of history. Hashtag setting the scene, why oar storage? Before we dive deep into the depths of oar storage, and yes, it is as thrilling as it sounds, let's set the stage. Viking longships were the Ferraris of their time, sleek, fast, and capable of both pillaging and making a quick getaway. But what good is a fast ship without a good set of oars? These wooden appendages were essential for rowing, maneuvering, and, let's be honest, looking cool while you're raiding a monastery. So, how did our Norse ancestors deal with the pressing issue of oar storage? It turns out the answer is a delightful mix of regional variations, laws, and some truly astonishing record-keeping practices. ### regional variations over time. The Vikings. A collection of seafaring warriors, explorers, and traders, all with a penchant for storage that could rival a modern IKEA catalog, if only they had invented the flat pack. The Vikings spanned a vast geographical area, from Scandinavia to the British Isles, and their storage practices varied as widely as their hairstyles. Seriously, have you seen some of those braids? In Norway, where fjords were abundant and sea routes were as common as bad weather, oars were often stored in specially designated racks known as oar sheds. These oar sheds were not just random huts, they were architectural marvels made from the finest timber, often adorned with carvings that would make even the most seasoned artist weep. Oars were stored vertically in these sheds to keep them dry, allowing the Vikings to grab them quickly when the call of adventure rang out, or when they spotted an unsuspecting village. Travel a bit south to Denmark, and things took a different turn. Here, oars preferred the horizontal life, often laid out like soldiers in a parade. The Danish believed that laying oars flat allowed for better air circulation, because who wouldn't want their oars to breathe? This practice was also a clever way of keeping track of inventory. Just imagine a Danish Viking counting his oars like a proud parent counting their children. 1, 2, 3, wait, where's Bjorn? Sweden, not wanting to be left out, had its own twist on oar storage. In the land of lakes and rivers, Swedes opted for the oar cradle, a beautifully crafted wooden contraption that cradled the oars gently, like a loving parent. These cradles were often placed near the water's edge, making it easy for Vikings to grab their oars and set sail without delay. In fact, the oar cradles became so iconic that in modern Swedish culture, they are often referenced in poetry as symbols of both readiness and nostalgia, a testament to the humble oar's enduring legacy. ### laws, edicts, and taxes, the bureaucratic side of oars. You might think that Viking life was all about raiding and revelry, but oh, how wrong you would be. Enter the laws and edicts of the time, which made even the most daring Viking cringe. Oar storage was not exempt from the clutches of bureaucracy. In fact, some of the most perplexing laws revolved around oar storage practices. Consider the oar tax of 872. Yes, you heard that right, Vikings were taxed on their oars. The tax was levied based on the number of oars a man owned, and it was determined by a rigorous inspection process that involved local officials inspecting oar racks and cradles. The more oars you had, the more you paid. Picture a burly Viking, stammering in front of a tax collector, "But I need all these oars for, my fleet of fishing boats." Spoiler alert, the tax collectors were not convinced. Additionally, oar storage was governed by a series of edicts that dictated how and where oars could be stored. Some laws specified that oars must be kept away from certain crops to prevent damage, because nothing says, "I'm a fierce warrior," like a crop of crushed barley. Others mandated that oars be stored in a manner that prevented theft, which was a common occurrence given the competition among Viking clans. You can imagine the heated debates at the local thing, the Viking assembly, over whether a horizontal or vertical storage method was more secure. Truly riveting stuff. ### logistics and supply chains, ores on the move. As with any successful venture, logistics played a crucial role in ore storage. The Viking world was not just about pillaging, it was an intricate web of trade routes and supply chains, and ores were a vital component of that system. Crafting ores was no small feat. Skilled artisans would select the best timber, often oak, to create ores that were both sturdy and lightweight. Once crafted, these ores needed to be transported to various locations, which required a meticulous logistical setup. The Vikings devised a system of ore transport that involved using larger ships to ferry smaller batches of ores to coastal settlements. This might not sound like much, but consider the challenges: rough seas, unpredictable weather, and the constant risk of piracy from rival clans. It was like a high-stakes game of Tetris, but with ores instead of blocks. Record-keeping was essential in this logistical ballet. The Vikings maintained ledgers that detailed the number of ores produced, their destinations, and even the names of the craftsmen. Imagine a Viking scribe, ink-stained fingers and all, meticulously logging. Today, we crafted 20 ores for the fine folk of Uppsala and 15 for the raiders of the south. These records provided insight into the supply chain and ensured that ores were distributed efficiently. ### The grotesque anecdote, ores and the unfortunate sledgehammer incident. Now, for the piece de resistance of our ore storage saga, the infamous sledgehammer incident of 980. Legend has it that in a small Viking village, a particularly ambitious ore maker named Eric the Overzealous decided to create the most magnificent ore storage system known to mankind. He envisioned a colossal wooden structure that would house hundreds of ores, towering over the village like a proud monument to ore craftsmanship. However, Eric, in his haste to impress the locals, neglected one crucial detail: the foundation. As the structure neared completion, disaster struck. Eric, eager to showcase his masterpiece, invited the entire village to a grand unveiling. As the villagers gathered, they marveled at the towering ore storage, oblivious to the impending doom. At the peak of excitement, Eric decided to demonstrate the structural integrity of his creation with a sledgehammer. "Behold the strength of my ores," he proclaimed, swinging the sledgehammer with reckless abandon. Little did he know, the moment the hammer struck, the entire structure collapsed, burying Eric in a cascade of ores and splintered wood. The villagers were left in shock, staring at the scene of chaos. Some began to laugh, while others rushed to help their fallen comrade. Eric emerged, covered in ores and splinters, a sight both hysterical and grotesque. He became a local legend, forever known as Eric the Organizer, a cautionary tale of ambition gone awry. ### Conclusion, the legacy of ore storage protocols. As we sail back to the present, it's clear that Viking boat ore storage protocols were far more complex than one might assume. From regional variations and bureaucratic laws to the logistic challenges and the occasional grotesque mishap, the history of ore storage is a testament to the ingenuity and quirkiness of Viking culture. So the next time you find yourself in a maritime mood, remember the humble oar and its storied past. It's not just a piece of wood, it's a symbol of adventure, ambition, and, sometimes, utter chaos. And who knows? Maybe one day, we'll look back on our own storage protocols, whether it's for oars or other mundane items, with the same bemusement that we reserve for Eric the Organizer. After all, history has a way of repeating itself, even when it comes to the most lackluster of subjects. ### the lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. When one thinks of Vikings, images of fierce warriors, horned helmets, and epic sea voyages spring to mind. However, lurking beneath the rippling tide of bloodlust and pillaging lies an uncharted territory of mediocrity, the history of Viking boat or storage protocols. Yes, dear reader, while their longships might have sailed into legend, their oars were often left languishing in the murky waters of bureaucratic inefficiency. So, grab your horned mugs and prepare for a journey through the lackluster, yet oddly fascinating world of Viking or logistics. ### regional variations over time. Let's dive into the murky waters of regional variations, for even the Vikings, with their penchant for plunder, couldn't agree on how to properly store a boat oar. In the fjords of Norway, for instance, oar storage was an art form, albeit a rather boring one. The Norwegians devised a system where oars were propped upright against the side of the longship, often adorned with quirky carvings that only the oar's owner could interpret. This method not only showcased their craftsmanship but also served as a sort of maritime Instagram, where the oars became a status symbol of sorts. "Look at my oar, it has a dragon carved into it," they would boast, while secretly resenting their neighbors' more elaborate knotwork. Meanwhile, over in Denmark, the oar situation took a decidedly more pragmatic turn. Danish oarsmen were known for their no-nonsense approach. They stored their oars in wooden racks, often treated with pitch to prevent rot from the moist maritime climate. Some historians argue that this was a sign of their industrious nature, while others claim it was just a desperate attempt to avoid the embarrassment of a soggy oar. The Danes, it seems, were more concerned about functionality than flair, as evidenced by their lack of decorative embellishments. "Why carve a dragon when you can have a perfectly functional oar?" they would mutter, as they glided silently across the waters, or racks in tow. But let's not forget the Swedes, who, in their quest to outdo their neighbors, came up with the most elaborate oar storage system ever conceived. The Swedish oar storage was a grand affair, with oars hung from intricate pulley systems that would have made even the most seasoned shipwrights weep with envy. The oars were displayed like trophies, complete with labels that read, "This oar conquered the fjords of Fjordland." However, it is worth noting that this ostentatious display came at a price. One fateful winter, after a particularly lavish oar exhibition, a blizzard struck, and the entire pulley system collapsed, burying half the village in a pile of ornate oars. Lesson learned: sometimes, less is more. ### laws, edicts, taxes, and ledgers. Ah, the thrilling world of Viking laws and edicts. Who doesn't dream of a day spent poring over ancient scrolls concerning the proper storage of oars? Believe it or not, Viking society was rife with regulations governing oar storage, and they were as riveting as you might expect. The Viking assembly, often found itself tangled in debates over or protocols that could make even the most ardent enthusiasts of maritime logistics yawn. One particularly notable edict, known as the Ordinance of 873, mandated that all longships must possess a designated or storage area. This was not merely a suggestion but a legal requirement, enforced by the fearsome local chieftains. Failure to comply could result in hefty fines. Imagine being dragged before the thing and being forced to pay a tax for your shoddy or storage. Sorry, my oars were propped up against the barn. I didn't know that wasn't allowed, one poor soul might plead, only to be met with a collective eye roll from the assembly. The documentation of these laws was extensive, leading to an entire subfield of Viking historiography dedicated to analyzing oar-related ledgers. Scribes, tasked with recording everything from battle conquests to the number of oars stored, became the unsung heroes of Viking bureaucracy. Ah, yes, here we have it, one scribe might say, poring over a dusty scroll. It appears that Rolf the Unlucky has been fined 3 silver coins for improperly storing his oars. A true tragedy for the ages. As with all bureaucratic endeavors, there were also countless taxes levied on or storage, because, of course, the Viking elite needed their share of the spoils. One particularly convoluted tax, the oar-holding tax, required shipowners to pay a percentage based on the total number of oars stored, leading to some rather creative accounting practices. Shipowners would often be caught trying to hide extra oars in the hayloft or under the floorboards to avoid detection, an oar heist of sorts. If we can just conceal these 5 extra oars, we'll save a fortune, they would whisper conspiratorially. ##### logistics and supply chains. Viking or logistics were a marvel of mediocrity. Picture this, oarsman A from Norway has a shipment of oars bound for oarsman B in Denmark. The journey is fraught with peril, not from sea monsters or rival warriors, but from the sheer tedium of coordinating or transportation. Oars were often transported via longships, which meant navigating through a labyrinth of waterways, and let's be honest, Viking ships were not exactly known for their efficiency in transporting oars. The oar supply chain was a tangled web of trade routes that would make even the most hardened logistics manager weep. Oars were crafted in various regions, leading to a hodgepodge of styles and sizes. This meant that oarsman B might receive a shipment of oars that were 2 feet longer than his longship could accommodate. What am I supposed to do with these? Use them as a new roof for my house, he would lament, as he watched his dreams of a smooth sailing adventure dissolve into chaos. Even the great Viking explorers, like Leif Erikson, had to grapple with the complexities of oar logistics. Legend has it that during one of his voyages to Vinland, he found himself with a surplus of oars after a particularly ill-timed trade deal. Instead of abandoning them, he cleverly repurposed the oars into a makeshift fence to protect his camp from the local wildlife. Look at this, my friends. We've invented the first oar fence, he declared, only to be met with groans from his crew, who were more interested in finding food than fending off moose. #######record keeping with lots of specifics. As tedious as it sounds, record keeping was essential for the Viking or industry. Each ship had its own ledger, detailing everything from the number of oars in storage to their dimensions and condition. These records were meticulously maintained by shipowners who, let's be honest, had way too much time on their hands. Ah, yes, we have 6 oars measuring 12 feet and 2 inches, 2 oars measuring 11 feet and 3 inches, and one suspiciously short oar that may or may not have been used as a toothpick, one meticulous owner might announce at a gathering, much to the dismay of his audience. Historians have unearthed numerous ledgers from Viking settlements, revealing the mind-numbing details of oar inventories. One entry reads, oars 1 to 5, in good condition, oars 6 to 8, rotted at the ends, or 9, possibly cursed. Yes, even the Vikings had to deal with the occasional haunted oar, which presumably added a layer of excitement to the otherwise drab world of oar storage. In an effort to streamline the record-keeping process, some enterprising Vikings invented a system of colored markings to denote the condition of their oars. Green meant excellent, yellow indicated needs maintenance, and red signified throw it back to the sea. This color-coded system, while undoubtedly innovative, led to some confusion, especially when one shipowner mistakenly painted all his oars red after a particularly bad fishing trip. "I swear these oars were fine yesterday," he exclaimed, only to be met with laughter from his fellow seafarers. Hashtag a surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, brace yourself for the final act of this or odyssey, a tale that is equal parts bizarre and grotesque. According to a lesser-known saga, a Viking chieftain named Bjorn the Disgruntled had a particularly tumultuous relationship with his oars. One fateful summer, after a long voyage, he returned home to find that his prized oars had been pilfered by a rival clan. Furious, Bjorn swore revenge. He devised a plan that would send shivers down the spines of even the bravest warriors. Instead of simply stealing the rival clan's oars, he had his men fashion a set of fake oars, one that was absurdly large and another that was comically small. During the dead of night, they stealthily placed these oars at the enemy's dock, accompanied by a message reading, "Take this as a token of our friendship and a warning, size does matter." The next morning, the rival clan woke to find their dock filled with the oversized and undersized oars, and the ensuing panic led to an all-out brawl over the oar incident of 892. In the chaos, one particularly unfortunate warrior tripped over the fake small oar, falling into the water and emerging with a rather unfortunate reputation as the warrior who drowned in a puddle. From that day forth, he was known as Soggy Sven, a name that haunted him for the rest of his life. Thus, the Viking world of oar storage, while seemingly mundane, was a treasure trove of hilarity, absurdity, and a dash of grotesque humor. The next time you think of Vikings, remember that while they may have conquered the seas, their oars often found themselves at the mercy of bureaucratic blunders and the occasional prank. So, raise your horns high, and toast to the oars of yore, a true testament to the lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. Ah, the noble Viking! Seafarers, warriors, and all-around enthusiasts of pillaging and plundering. When one thinks of their exploits, images of dragon-headed longships slicing through icy waters come to mind. But let's take a moment to discuss a subject that has been tragically overlooked in the annals of history, the thrillingly mundane world of Viking boat or storage protocols. Yes, you heard that right, oars, those humble, often forgotten appendages of maritime adventure. If you think this is a snooze fest, hold on to your helmets. We're about to delve into the regional variations, laws, logistics, and even the borderline grotesque tales that will leave you both enlightened and slightly horrified. Hashtag regional variations over time. To understand the Viking or storage protocols, we must first take a quick jaunt through the varied landscapes of Scandinavia. Picture this, a longship docked in the frigid waters of Norway, while a counterpart from Denmark enjoys a sunny day in the fjords. The two ships, while both Viking vessels, had very different storage needs based on their environments. Norwegians, with their penchant for steep cliffs and rocky shores, often had to be more creative with their storage solutions. Some would hang their oars from the rafters of their boathouses, while others simply tossed them into the nearest fjord, because, after all, who needs organization when you have a solid backup plan? Meanwhile, down in Denmark, where the water was a bit calmer and the sun a bit brighter, storage took on a rather different aesthetic. Danish Vikings, with their love for efficiency, developed an elaborate system of racks. These racks were not only functional but also a point of pride. Like a Viking's home, storage had to reflect the owner's status. The more oars you could display, the more impressive your boat, and by extension, you, would appear. This leads us to the first lesson in storage. It's not just about keeping your oars off the ground, it's about keeping your reputation afloat. As we travel to Sweden, we find yet another variation. Here, storage was often dictated by the season. In winter, oars were stored in cozy, snug compartments below deck, warmed by the glow of a fire that had been kindled with the remains of last year's less than successful pillaging attempts. Come spring, however, those same oars would be paraded on deck like trophies, reminding everyone of the impending adventures that awaited. Clearly, storage protocols were not just about practicality, they were a form of seasonal fashion statement. Hashtag laws, edicts, taxes, and ledgers. You might be wondering what laws govern the storage of oars. Well, dear reader, prepare for the most riveting chapter of Viking history. In the year 960 AD, King Harald Bluetooth, yes, that's where the technology got its name, issued a decree that mandated standardized sizes across all Viking ships in his realm. It was a bold move, aimed at ensuring that no oar was left behind, or worse, misstored. This law also introduced a tax on excess oars. Yes, you read that correctly. If you had more oars than your ship could handle, you'd be paying through the nose for your nautical hoarding habit. The record-keeping for these taxes was, of course, done meticulously. Ledgers were maintained by local chieftains who, despite their warrior status, had to wield quills instead of swords when it came to accounting. Messy handwriting could lead to disastrous misunderstandings. Imagine showing up to a pillaging raid only to find out that you had been taxed for 3 extra oars you didn't even own. The humiliation would be enough to make any Viking reconsider their life choices. But let's not forget the infamous Ore Storage Act of 1025, which dictated how ores must be stored during the off-season. This act mandated that ores be stored in a northward-facing position, lest the spirits of the sea become angered. Failure to comply could lead to a fine or, worse, bad luck during your next voyage. And yes, you can bet that any Viking worth their salt had a dedicated scribe to ensure compliance with such ludicrous edicts. ### logistics and supply chains. Now, let's delve into logistics and supply chains, because what could be more riveting than a discussion of inventory management? The Viking Age was not just about raiding and sailing, it was also a time of remarkable organization, especially when it came to ore storage. You see, Viking ships weren't just built for speed and style, they were engineered for efficiency. When a Viking ship would set sail, it carried not just its crew but also a carefully curated inventory of ores. Each ship had a designated or master, a title that sounds far more glamorous than the job entailed. This or master was responsible for ensuring that all ores were accounted for and properly stored before and after each voyage. Can you imagine the pressure? One missing ore could lead to an angry mob of warriors lamenting their fate while trying to row with one hand and hold their mead with the other. In terms of supply chains, the Vikings had an advanced system for sourcing ores. They had designated forests, often near their settlements, where tree species like oak and ash were harvested specifically for ore production. Local craftsmen would then be commissioned to carve these trees into ores of varying lengths and designs. Each ore had to be tailored to the specific needs of the ship, and that required a level of collaboration between shipbuilders and craftsmen that would make modern supply chain managers weep with envy. Upon completion, these ores were transported to the docks, where each was tagged with a ledger entry detailing its dimensions and intended ship. Yes, ores had their own identification numbers. If only they could talk, they'd have some fantastically boring tales to tell. ### record keeping with lots of specifics. Record keeping, the unsung hero of every great Viking adventure. Without meticulous logs, the Viking Age would have devolved into chaos, and we all know how well chaos works out for pillagers. Ore storage protocols were no exception. Each Viking settlement had its own version of the ore book, a ledger that kept track of ore inventory, condition, and storage location. These ores were rated on a scale from battle ready to let's just use this for kindling. The ore book would also include details about any repairs made, which ore had been borrowed by whom, and, most importantly, who had been caught trying to sneak an extra ore onto their ship without paying their tax. These records were often kept in a secure location, usually near the longhouse or boathouse, protected from both the elements and the prying eyes of rival clans. The ore book also contained meticulous drawings of ore designs, specifications for length and width, and even suggestions for optimal storage techniques. Some entries read like poetry, extolling the virtues of a well-crafted ore, while others were more practical, detailing which ores had been damaged during particularly raucous raids. One can only imagine the oar master's frustration when a new scribe would join the ranks, scrawling illegibly and mixing up oar sizes. No, Bjorn, oars are not the same as shields. I can assure you that trying to row with a shield will not end well for anyone involved. One surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. As riveting as our storage protocols may be, no discussion would be complete without a tale that hinges on the bizarre, and perhaps a touch grotesque. Let me introduce you to the infamous saga of Ragnar the Unfortunate and his ill-fated oar. It was said that Ragnar, a Viking of some repute, had a particular fondness for a specific oar, an ornate piece carved from the heartwood of a mythical tree. This oar was not only beautiful but also believed to bring good fortune. However, one fateful night, after a particularly heavy night of celebrations, mead-fueled debauchery, Ragnar misplaced his prized oar. Desperate to find it, he retraced his steps, only to discover that his oar had been commandeered by a rival clan for use in a "who can paddle fastest" contest. Not to be outdone, Ragnar, in a fit of rage, stormed into the contest, demanding the return of his beloved oar. The rival clan, amused by Ragnar's antics, agreed to return it, but only if he could defeat their champion in a paddle-off. As fate would have it, Ragnar was not a great paddler. In fact, he was rather terrible. Mid-competition, he lost control of his ship, veering off course and crashing into a floating pile of seaweed. The oar, however, had other ideas. It flew from his grasp, twirled in the air, and landed smack in the middle of the rival clan's longhouse, narrowly missing a very surprised bard. The oar was ultimately returned, but not before it had been ceremonially baptized by the rival clansman, who proceeded to carve the word "cursed" into its side. From that day on, Ragnar's beloved oar became a cautionary tale among Viking families, a reminder that even the most coveted possessions can lead to unexpected and rather grotesque misadventures. Conclusion. So there you have it, a thrilling yet oddly unglamorous peek into the world of Viking boat or storage protocols. From regional variations that reflect the cultural quirks of Scandinavia to the rather tedious nature of tax laws and logistics, the humble oar has an underappreciated history. And let's not forget the footnotes of record-keeping that could bore even the most fervent historian, or the grotesque tales that remind us that no matter how grand the adventure, the saga of oar storage remains a quirky footnote in the larger narrative of Viking life. So next time you see a Viking longship, don't just marvel at the dragon-head prow, spare a thought for the oars and the surprisingly rich history of their storage. Because in the grand tapestry of history, sometimes the most mundane details can tell the most outrageous tales. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. Ah, the Vikings! Those intrepid seafaring warriors who pillaged and plundered their way through history like the world's angriest raccoons, fueled by mead and an insatiable lust for adventure. When we think of Vikings, our minds conjure images of horned helmets, longships slicing through the frothy waves, and a general air of rugged masculinity and the kind of beard that could house an entire ecosystem. However, amidst this glorified chaos, lies a mundane yet oddly fascinating aspect of their nautical lives, the storage of oars. Yes, dear reader, oars. Those long, wooden appendages that provided propulsion to their magnificent longships and, let's be honest, served as excellent conversational distractions during long voyages. Regional variations over time. First, let's set the stage. Viking life wasn't homogeneous. The Norsemen roamed far and wide, from the fjords of Norway to the rolling hills of England and even as far as the frozen tundras of Greenland. Each region had its own, shall we say, charmingly lackluster approach to oar storage. In the Norse heartland, oars were often stored vertically in designated or racks, much like how one might store a collection of vintage wine, though without the sommelier's pretentiousness. These racks were typically fashioned from timber harvested from the very trees that bore witness to many a Viking raid. A testament to efficiency, these racks not only kept oars organized but also allowed for quick access during the inevitable moments when a sudden battle would break out, because nothing says surprise attack like having your oars in a neat little row. Meanwhile, in the more temperate regions, oar storage took on a more casual demeanor. Oars were often tossed haphazardly into the hulls of ships, leading to a chaotic, almost anarchic state of affairs. Imagine the scene: a band of Vikings, fresh from a successful raid, tossing their oars willy-nilly as they disembark, only to find that they're now in a game of hide-and-seek with their oars. Where's my left oar? Did you check under the mead barrel? Oh, but the true champions of oar storage were the Swedes, who, in their infinite wisdom, devised a system that would make any modern organizational guru weep with joy. They introduced elaborate oar holders that resembled the intricate designs of their runestones, both functional and aesthetically pleasing. Each oar was labeled according to size and purpose, ensuring that the crew could seamlessly switch from rowing to raiding without the risk of grabbing a paddle meant for a child's toy boat. Because nothing screams fearsome Viking like brandishing a miniature oar. Laws, edicts, taxes, ledgers. As with any aspect of Viking society, oar storage was not exempt from the bureaucratic tendrils of laws and taxes. Yes, you heard it right. The Vikings, who were often thought of as little more than barbaric marauders, had their fair share of legalities governing even the most absurd of matters. Take, for instance, the infamous oar tax of 870 AD. This peculiar edict mandated that any Viking ship with more than 5 oars must pay a fee to the local chieftain. The rationale? To maintain the local harbor and ensure that oars were stored in an orderly fashion, thus preventing chaos during the busy raiding season. Of course, this led to a thriving black market for unregistered oars, where crafty Vikings would attempt to pass off their extra paddles as decorative pieces for their living rooms. Oh, yes, that's just an oar. I keep it there for, aesthetic purposes. Record keeping among the Vikings was another delightful aspect of oar storage. You see, while most people might think of Viking runes as ancient poetry or epic sagas, they often served a far more practical purpose. Ledgers detailing oar inventory were meticulously maintained, chronicling the number of oars owned, their sizes, and even their condition. Ah, yes, this one's in excellent shape, but this one? Well, it's seen better days. Let's not take it on another raid. I'd hate to be the one who loses an or mid-battle. The most meticulous record-keeper of the Viking Age was undoubtedly Eric the Excelled, who famously kept a ledger so extensive that it spanned over 100 parchment sheets. Historians today speculate that it contained everything from ore dimensions to the precise angle at which each ore should be stored to maximize hull space. Yes, Eric may have never won a single battle, but he could certainly win a competition for most organized ore storage. Logistics and supply chains. Now, let's dive into the logistics of ore storage, which I assure you is as riveting as it sounds. The Vikings were early pioneers of supply chain management, and ores were a crucial part of that equation. Imagine a Viking longship embarking on a raid, only to find they forgot their oars back at the last fjord. Catastrophe. To prevent such disasters, Viking leaders developed a network of ore storage facilities along key waterways. These facilities, often situated near strategic locations, were stocked with ores of various sizes, ensuring that no Viking ship would ever have to face the indignity of paddling with their hands. Ah, yes, my ship has no oars. Looks like we'll just have to row with our hands. TSK, tisk. The logistics of ore transport were equally impressive. Oars were crafted in workshops that dotted the landscape, each workshop specializing in different types of oars, long, short, heavy, and lightweight. Once crafted, the oars would embark on a journey of their own, traveling by cart and then by ship to reach their final destination. Picture this, a weary Viking merchant, on a quest to deliver ores, trading his way through various regions, only to be met with a band of rival Vikings who are also in need of oars. You have the left oars, but I have the right ones. A perfect match. Record keeping with lots of specifics. As far as record keeping goes, it was no small feat to keep track of oars. The Vikings had a system that involved not only written records but also physical markers. Some enterprising Vikings even fashioned oar-shaped tokens that represented each oar in their inventory. If you lost an oar, you could hand over the token to the local chief, only to receive a new one, albeit under the watchful gaze of a judgmental clerk. You again. Didn't you lose an oar last week? For the more forgetful among them, there were oral records. These were passed down from one generation to the next, with tales of heroic or storage strategies woven into the fabric of their legendary sagas. One can only imagine the bard proudly proclaiming, "And lo, the great King Bjorn the Beardless stored his oars in a manner so grand that even the gods were envious." Of course, as with any record-keeping system, errors were bound to occur. The infamous or confusion of 950 AD led to a rather embarrassing incident where a ship set sail with mismatched oars, resulting in a disastrous rowing experience. The crew, in a fit of laughter, dubbed it the rowing circus, and it became a legendary tale, passed down through generations. One surprising, borderline grotesque anecdote. Now, let's wrap things up with a tale that's less about oars and more about the consequences of neglecting proper oar storage. In the year 982 AD, a Viking longship named the Sea Serpent embarked on a raid that would go down in history, not for its glory, but for its absurdity. After a successful plunder, the crew returned to their ship, only to find that the ores had been improperly stored in the hull. To make matters worse, a family of seagulls had taken residence in the ore storage area, using the ores as a makeshift nest. The crew, upon discovering the situation, found themselves in a rather grotesque dilemma. They could either evict the seagulls and retrieve their ores, or leave the birds to their foul, pun intended, fate. In a moment of poor judgment, they decided to compromise. The crew donned makeshift helmets made from their own discarded ores and staged a dramatic reenactment of their legendary battles, all while attempting to scare the seagulls away. The result? A cacophony of squawks and confused glances, as the seagulls fought back valiantly, refusing to budge. Ultimately, the crew gave up, leaving the oars where they were and setting sail with makeshift paddles crafted from whatever they could find on board. Their return was met with incredulous laughter from their fellow Vikings, who couldn't believe they'd been bested by a flock of birds. So, there you have it, dear readers, a journey through the surprisingly complex, if somewhat lackluster, history of Viking boat or storage protocols. Who knew that beneath the rugged exterior of these sea warriors lay a world of bureaucratic bewilderment, logistical lunacy, and the occasional feud with a family of seagulls? Next time you think of the Vikings, remember that their legacy is not just about conquest, but also about the humble, if not utterly ridiculous, art of ore storage. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. When we think of the Vikings, our minds likely conjure vivid images of horned helmets, fierce longships slicing through icy waters, and epic sagas of bold warriors. Yet, hidden in the folds of this grand narrative lies a curious and often overlooked aspect of Viking life: the protocols surrounding the storage of boat oars. Though seemingly mundane, these practices reveal insights into the daily lives of the Norse people and their maritime culture, and they shed light on the societal structures that governed even the minutiae of Viking existence. Minor figures and petty rules. While Viking chieftains and warriors dominated the historical narrative, a host of minor figures played crucial roles in the enforcement of ore storage protocols. Among them were local ore stewards, often referred to as ore keepers, who held the responsibility of overseeing the proper storage of ores in a village or settlement. These men, sometimes the least celebrated members of the community, wielded surprising influence. They were the unsung custodians of maritime organization, ensuring that ores were not only stored correctly but also that they remained in good condition, a task vital for the seafaring lifestyle. The protocols themselves were often petty and filled with nuances. For instance, one minor rule dictated that oars should be placed at a 40-degree angle from the hull to allow for optimal drainage after a rainstorm. Another peculiar regulation stated that oars belonging to the same vessel must be stored in pairs, with no more than 2 oars of differing lengths allowed in a single storage space, lest it invite the wrath of the sea gods. This strict adherence to order reflected a broader cultural belief that chaos in storage would lead to chaos at sea. Case studies with dates and lists. 1. The Ore Storage Protocol of 865 CE in Hedeby. In this bustling trade center, a series of community meetings took place in the summer of 865 CE to address issues regarding ore maintenance. The ore keepers proposed a list of guidelines that included: ores must be sanded and sealed with fish oil every spring. Each vessel's ores must be stored under a designated tarp to protect them from the elements. A system of color coding was introduced, with each vessel assigned a different color of dye for its ores. This system was intended to prevent mix-ups during the busy trading season, leading to a period of relative harmony among the ore stewards. 2. The Great Ore Caper of 912 CE in Dublin. The Viking settlement in Dublin faced a crisis when an audacious theft occurred in 912 CE. A band of rival ore keepers from a neighboring settlement made off with a set of finely crafted ores. The ensuing investigation revealed that the stolen ores had been improperly stored according to regulations, leading to their easy theft. The Dublin ore keepers quickly implemented a new protocol that mandated the use of lockable storage sheds for all ores. This incident sparked debates about the nature of theft and responsibility within the Viking community and prompted a series of criminal trials that focused on the ethical implications of ore storage. 3. Comparative study, ore storage in the Mediterranean. While Viking ore storage protocols may seem intricate, a comparison with Mediterranean maritime practices reveals a stark contrast. In ancient Rome, ores were often treated as expendable commodities rather than cherished possessions. Ores would be cast aside after a single voyage, only to be replaced with new ones for the next expedition. This difference highlights not only the Vikings' reverence for their ores, but also their understanding of craftsmanship and the importance of maintaining equipment for longevity. Archaeological tidbits. Recent archaeological findings have unearthed intriguing evidence of Viking ore storage practices. In a dig conducted at the site of a longship burial in Norway, archaeologists discovered a trove of wooden ores, meticulously preserved due to the anaerobic conditions of the burial site. These ores provided insight into the craftsmanship involved. They were not merely functional tools but were also adorned with intricate carvings, suggesting that Vikings took pride in their ores much like they did their ships. Moreover, the discovery of storage racks, believed to have been used for ore organization, has further enriched our understanding of Viking maritime culture. These racks were designed with slots tailored to specific lengths of ores, reinforcing the idea that ore storage was an essential part of ship maintenance. Notably, some of these racks were found with remnants of fish oil, indicating that the practice of oiling ores for preservation was indeed widespread and deeply ingrained in Viking culture. Rhetorical questions to hook curiosity. How did the seemingly mundane act of ore storage reflect the broader societal norms and values of the Viking Age? What might the fate of a Viking voyage have hinged on the successful implementation of these petty rules? Conclusion: a reflection on ore storage protocols. In the grand tapestry of Viking history, ore storage protocols may seem like a footnote, yet they illuminate the meticulous nature of a civilization defined by its seafaring prowess. The interplay between minor figures, petty rules, and the occasional scandal reveals a society where even the most trivial aspects of daily life were governed by a complex web of cultural expectations and practical needs. Through case studies and archaeological findings, we gain insight into a world where oars were not just tools of navigation but symbols of identity, craftsmanship, and community. The Viking Age, often romanticized as a time of conquest and valor, was also a period steeped in the nuances of everyday life, where the proper storage of ores could determine a village's prosperity or ruin. As we reflect on the protocols surrounding ore storage, we are reminded that history is often found in the details, the seemingly small practices that, when examined closely, reveal the shared humanity of a people who once traversed the tumultuous waters of the North Atlantic. In a world where grand narratives often overshadow the mundane, the study of Viking ore storage reminds us that every aspect of life, no matter how trivial, contributes to the rich and complex story of humanity. The lackluster history of Viking boat ore storage protocols. When we think of the Vikings, our minds likely conjure vivid images of horned helmets, fierce longships slicing through icy waters, and epic sagas of bold warriors. Yet, hidden in the folds of this grand narrative lies a curious and often overlooked aspect of Viking life, the protocols surrounding the storage of boat oars. Though seemingly mundane, these practices reveal insights into the daily lives of the Norse people and their maritime culture. Oars were an essential component of Viking longships, which were developed around the 8th century AD and reached their zenith in the 10th century. These vessels were marvels of engineering, designed for both speed and versatility, allowing the Vikings to traverse vast distances across open seas and navigate shallow rivers. The longships were typically around 20 to 30 meters long and could carry up to 60 men, necessitating a robust system for storing and managing the numerous oars that powered them. Archaeological findings, particularly from sites like the Oseberg ship burial, dating to around 834 AD, and the Gokstad ship, circa 890 AD, have provided insights into the materials and methods used for creating oars. Typically, Viking oars were made from sturdy wood such as oak or ash, with lengths varying from 3 to 5 meters. The oars were crafted with a rounded blade on one end to maximize efficiency in the water while ensuring durability against the rigors of sea travel. The protocols surrounding oar storage were likely influenced by factors such as climate, geography, and the specific needs of a crew. For instance, in coastal regions like Norway, where the weather can be unpredictable, storing oars in a well-protected area was crucial. Wooden racks were often constructed on board or on land near docking areas to keep the oars dry and prevent warping. These racks typically featured slats or grooves designed to hold multiple oars in place, reducing the risk of damage during storms or rough seas. Historical texts and sagas, such as the Saga of the Greenlanders, provide additional context to the practices surrounding oar storage. In these narratives, oars are sometimes mentioned in the context of preparation for voyages or during periods of rest. For example, before embarking on voyages to North America around the year 1000 AD, crews would meticulously check and store their oars, ensuring that each one was in prime condition for the journey ahead. This attention to detail underscores the importance of oars in Viking maritime culture and their role in successful navigation. Moreover, oar storage protocols were not only about protection but also about organization and efficiency. Crews would often have designated roles, and each member was familiar with the location of the oars to facilitate quick access during emergencies. In some cases, oars were marked with specific symbols or colors to indicate ownership or to signify their purpose, such as for rowing or steering. Case studies of recovered longships, such as the Skoldelef ships found in Denmark, reveal that ore storage systems were not uniform across all Viking settlements. The Skoldelef vessels, dating from the 11th century, exhibited different methods of securing ores, indicating regional variations in design and storage techniques. For instance, some ships featured ore ports built directly into the hull, allowing for immediate access while at sea, while others relied on external racks. In summary, the history of Viking boat or storage protocols is an often overlooked but fascinating aspect of their maritime culture. By examining the materials, construction, and organizational methods used to manage ores, we gain a deeper understanding of the intricacies of Viking life and their remarkable adaptability to the challenges posed by their environment. The care taken in storing ores, as well as the cultural significance attributed to them, reflects the Vikings' profound connection to the sea and their identity as seafarers. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols. The Viking Age, which spanned from approximately 793 to 1066 CE, is often romanticized for its fierce warriors, audacious voyages, and sophisticated shipbuilding techniques. However, beneath the surface of this seafaring culture lies a surprisingly mundane aspect: the protocols for storing boat ores. While the grand exploits of Viking chieftains and the beauty of their longships are often celebrated, the minutiae of ore storage reveal a different side of Viking life, one filled with minor figures, petty rules, and a surprising lack of drama. Minor figures and petty rules. One of the lesser-known figures in Viking history is Ragnhild the Meticulous, a minor chieftainess known primarily for her obsession with ore maintenance and storage. Living in the late 10th century in what is now Norway, she instituted a series of regulations that would go down in history as the ore laws of Ragnhild. 1. Ore length compliance. Ragnhild mandated that oars must be of uniform length, not exceeding 2.5 meters. This was to ensure that they could fit into the designated storage racks on ships without causing damage or disarray. 2. Rotational storage. In a bid to prolong the life of each ore, Ragnhild required that oars be rotated regularly in their storage positions. This might seem trivial, but it reflected the meticulousness of a leader who valued even the smallest aspects of ship operation. 3. Seasonal cleaning protocols. Every autumn, Ragnhild's crew was required to clean the oars with a mixture of salt water and whale blubber, a practice she believed would ward off rot and decay. While these rules may seem trivial compared to the Vikings' more renowned exploits, they were emblematic of the organizational spirit that characterized Viking society. Ragnhild's regulations, though minor, played a significant role in ensuring that her ship was seaworthy and ready for the next raid. Case studies with dates and lists. The protocols of Viking ore storage were not uniform across the entire Norse world. For instance, the town of Koppang in Norway, established around 900 CE, had its own set of guidelines that differed from those of Ragnhild's crew. 1. Koppang ore protocols, 900 CE. Oars were to be stored horizontally in racks made of oak to prevent bending. Each oar was labeled with a runestone to identify its assigned rower. A yearly gathering was held to discuss the effectiveness of storage methods and make adjustments as necessary. 2. Hedeby or protocols, circa 800-1050 CE. Oars were categorized based on their use, raiding, fishing, or trade. A special ceremony was conducted each spring where crews would bless their oars for good fortune. The oars were treated with a mixture of tar and herbs believed to enhance their resilience. By comparing these two cases, we see how local customs influenced storage practices. While Kaupang focused on practicality and organization, Hedeby infused their storage methods with ritualistic significance, reflecting the broader cultural values of their respective communities. Comparisons to other regions. When we expand our view beyond the Viking world, we find that our storage protocols varied significantly in other seafaring cultures. For instance, the ancient Greeks had their own methods for storing oars, which were often secured in a vertical position to allow for quick access during naval engagements. This contrast highlights a fundamental difference in Viking philosophy. For the Norse, the oar was not just a tool but a symbol of collaboration. In the Mediterranean, oars were often crafted from lighter materials, which allowed for easier handling and storage. Similarly, in East Asia, the Chinese developed techniques for storing their oars in specially designed compartments built into their ships, reflecting an advanced understanding of space utilization. The Vikings, on the other hand, typically relied on simpler storage solutions, often opting for open racks that allowed for easy visibility, albeit at the risk of exposure to the elements. Archaeological tidbits. Archaeological discoveries have shed light on Viking or storage practices, with several well-preserved longships unearthed in burial mounds across Scandinavia. The Oseberg ship, excavated in Norway in 1904, provided invaluable insights into Viking shipbuilding and, by extension, or storage. In the Oseberg ship, researchers found evidence of oar slots carved into the ship's sides, an indication that oars were stored securely when not in use. Interestingly, the ship also contained several oar remnants made from a variety of woods, including ash and elm, suggesting that different materials were preferred for their buoyancy and durability. Moreover, the excavation of the Gokstad ship in 1880 revealed a wealth of oars, many of which showed signs of wear and tear, indicating that they were regularly used and not merely ceremonial. Such findings support the notion that while the Vikings may have had minor figures like Ragnhild the Meticulous, their practical approach to oar storage was deeply rooted in their need for efficiency and readiness. 2 rhetorical questions. What if those seemingly trivial oar storage protocols were the unsung heroes behind the Vikings' legendary maritime exploits? Could it be that the success of their raids hinged not just on their battle strategies but also on how they cared for, maintained, and stored their oars? The legacy of Viking oar storage. While the Viking Age has been romanticized through tales of valiant warriors and epic battles, the reality is often far more mundane. The lackluster history of Viking boat or storage protocols serves as a reminder that even the most extraordinary cultures have their trivialities. Ragnhild the Meticulous and her contemporaries may not have achieved the same level of fame as figures like Ragnar Lothbrok or Leif Erikson, but their contributions to maintaining the efficiency of Viking ships were crucial. In many ways, the oar is a metaphor for the Viking spirit, simple yet essential, often overlooked yet deeply impactful. As we continue to explore the fascinating world of the Vikings, we must remember that even the most menial tasks can play a pivotal role in the broader narrative of history. As we consider the maritime achievements of these Norse explorers, we must also acknowledge the uncelebrated details behind their success, including their protocols for oar storage, a testimony to their foresight, pragmatism, and unwavering commitment to their craft. In conclusion, the story of Viking oar storage is a tapestry woven with minor figures, petty regulations, and the occasional ceremonial flair. It is a reminder that history is often found in the details, and that even the most mundane aspects of life can shape the destinies of great civilizations. So next time you think of the Vikings, consider the oars that propelled them across the seas, and remember the meticulous protocols that ensured they were always primed for adventure. ### The Lackluster History of Viking Boat or Storage Protocols. When we think of the Vikings, we conjure up images of fierce warriors, longships slicing through the icy waters of the North Atlantic, and grand tales of exploration and conquest. Yet, amid the grandeur and glory of their seafaring exploits, lies a surprisingly mundane detail that has perplexed historians and maritime enthusiasts alike: the protocols surrounding the storage of oars on Viking longships. While many historical accounts laud the craftsmanship of Viking ships and their navigational prowess, little attention has been given to the seemingly trivial, yet essential, practice of oar storage. How did these warriors manage their oars? What minor figures and petty rules governed this everyday aspect of their seafaring lives? ### Minor figures and petty rules. In the annals of Viking history, the names of great leaders such as Harald Hardrada and Leif Erikson are etched in stone, but what of the lesser-known figures who devoted their lives to maintaining the daily functions of Viking society? Enter the oar steward, a minor figure often overlooked in the grand narratives of Norse mythology and epic sagas. The oar steward was responsible for the management of oar storage, a task that, while not glamorous, was crucial for the efficiency of longship operations. A series of petty rules governed the oar steward's duties. For instance, it was strictly forbidden to store oars in any manner that could lead to warping or damage. A well-ordered row of oars was deemed essential, with the first oar on the left designated for the captain, while the rest were arranged in decreasing order of rank. Such hierarchical storage protocols ensured that each crew member could find their oar swiftly, avoiding the chaos that could erupt during those critical moments when a swift escape was necessary. ### Case studies with dates and lists. Various historical records from the Viking Age provide insight into oar storage practices. A notable entry from the Icelandic sagas, dated around 1000 AD, describes an incident involving the longship Drakr. During a raid on the British Isles, the crew had to abandon ship in a hurry. The oars, stacked haphazardly in the storage compartment, led to a chaotic escape, with some crew members mistakenly grabbing the wrong oars, resulting in a comical but dangerous delay. This mishap highlighted the need for a more structured approach to oar storage. In another case from 1066 AD, the Battle of Stamford Bridge documented the meticulous arrangement of oars aboard King Harold Hardrada's longship. Each oar was inscribed with the name of its owner, and oars were stored in a specific order based on their length and weight. A list compiled from the sagas reveals the following classifications. 1. Captain's oar, longest and heaviest, with intricate carvings. 2. First mate's oar, slightly shorter, decorated with simple etchings. 3. Navigator's oar, medium length, with a smooth finish. 4. Deckhand oars, shortest, unadorned, and utilitarian. This classification system not only ensured efficiency but also imbued each oar with a sense of personal significance, a connection between the oar and its wielder. Hashtag comparisons to other regions. While Viking or storage protocols may seem trivial, a comparison to maritime practices in other regions reveals a rich tapestry of seafaring traditions. In the Mediterranean, for instance, the ancient Greeks had a more communal approach to oar storage. Oars were often stored in a shared compartment, leading to a collaborative atmosphere among the crew. However, this sometimes resulted in confusion, as oars were frequently misidentified, leading to squabbles over ownership. In contrast, the Polynesians, renowned for their navigation skills across the vast Pacific Ocean, had a distinctly different approach to oar storage. Their double-hulled canoes utilized a system of detachable paddles that could be easily stowed away to accommodate the shifting dynamics of ocean currents. This adaptability was a stark contrast to the rigid protocols established by the Vikings. Hashtag archaeological tidbits. Archaeological excavations of Viking ship graves, particularly in Norway and Sweden, have provided fascinating insights into their oar storage practices. In the Oseberg ship burial, unearthed in 1904, archaeologists discovered an assortment of well-preserved oars alongside various artifacts. Notably, the oars were stored in a manner that suggested they were placed in a protective coating of animal fat to prevent rot. This indicates a sophisticated understanding of preservation techniques, underscoring the importance of oars in Viking maritime culture. Moreover, some oars found in these excavations featured unique markings, hinting at the possibility of a guild system among oar makers. This finding raises intriguing questions. Were there specific families or clans known for their exceptional craft in producing oars? Did the Vikings establish a code of conduct governing oar production and storage? Hashtag rhetorical questions to hook curiosity. Is it possible that the seemingly mundane act of storing oars could hold the key to understanding Viking social structure? What secrets might the oar storage protocols of the Vikings reveal about their values, hierarchies, and daily lives? Hashtag conclusion. While the Viking Age is often romanticized through tales of adventure and conquest, the reality was that daily life was filled with mundane yet essential tasks, including the management of oar storage. The minor figures, petty rules, and intriguing case studies surrounding this seemingly trivial aspect of Viking life offer a unique lens through which to view their society. In a world enamored with the grand narratives of warriors and explorers, it is the overlooked details, the oars and their stewards, that provide a deeper understanding of what it meant to be a Viking. So, the next time you envision a Viking longship cutting through the waves, take a moment to consider the intricacies of or storage protocols that kept the vessel gliding smoothly across the waters, ensuring that tales of glory would continue to echo through the ages. In this lackluster history of or storage, we find a vibrant tapestry of daily life, social structure, and the indomitable spirit of a people who dared to sail into the unknown. And that's a wrap on today's episode. We dove into some wild facts, but remember, you can't unsee that llama in a tuxedo. Here's a surprising nugget for you. Did you know llamas can actually recognize human faces? Talk about a furry friend with a good memory. If you enjoyed our quirky journey today, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more fun, and drop a comment below with your favorite fact. We want to hear from you. Don't forget to check out our related episodes for even more mind-boggling stories that will keep you entertained. And hey, if you want to drift off to the sound of our fascinating tales, turn on loop so this episode plays on repeat until you gently doze off. Sweet dreams.